So first things first, I think this is actually the last playoff game of the week, but it's the first one in the dock. We have Red Robot versus Spooty. As we've been doing each week, we will kind of just start from A tier and work our way down. And for those who missed the recap last week, A tier playoffs are all best of 3, and then A tier and B tier finals are also best of 3, and everything else is best of 1 for playoffs. So there will be a little bit of variety in terms of how many games we actually see from each game. So starting off with game 1 of Red Robot versus Spooty. Just getting into it, we have Porgy collect 3 fuel tanks, which is one of the fastest goals in UFO 50 Bingo, period. This is a goal that, even if you're not like shot boosting everywhere around, can only take a couple of minutes, but as you can see between Red Robot and Spooty, both are very comfortable, and this is typically like a 1-minute goal. And that's what we end up seeing here, although it does cut a little bit close, and once again, like every other time we see this goal, Lamia likes to show up and say hi. Red Robot does make it in there and is able to grab the quick early space in exactly 1 minute. Let me make sure that this board actually, okay, it looks like it's showing up right. So we then do see a pivot into Golfaria as we get a really fast Valbrace goal. Valbrace and Golfaria hitting Eagles are both really quick goals, and even though Red Robot was able to get through the Valbrace fight and then hit an Eagle of his own, Spooty was able to grab that since he was in there first. Gonna be honest, I probably shouldn't have the Raiders game on my phone while I'm watching this, because all they're doing is upsetting me, but I need to watch this train wreck so once we're eventually good, I can say I was there for this nonsense. But getting back into this, we do, like, I've mentioned this in previous recaps, but I will mention it here as well. It's sometimes a bit difficult to recap A-tier stuff without just kind of sitting and watching A-tier like play games, because even at their like quote-unquote slowest points, they're still incredibly fast, and goals are just kind of flying off the board left and right. Especially in this game in particular. Porgy defeat 3 fuel tanks, Valbrace defeat the Crone, Golfaria hit 3 Eagles, Campanella to have 300 coins, Valgress Gold Disc are all really fast goals. And we can see 5.5 minutes into this game, there's theoretically going to be 5 spaces marked off, and that pace pretty much continues for the rest of the A-tier matches. Like, even skipping a couple of minutes in, and 3 or 4 different spaces are marked off. And already we are starting to see a bingo threat from Red Robot's side of a diagonal. The Campanella Trilogy general goal is kind of one of the longer ones, so wouldn't really surprise me if, I say wouldn't surprise me as if this game didn't already happen, but wouldn't have surprised me in the situation if that was a spot that was being threatened on the board but then not actually gone for, like what ends up happening here. But while working on Grimstone, was able to grab 3 skills at once and is now going to be able to pop back into grab another goal, but I'm not 100% sure what that goal was. Oh, and this is a bit of an extended pause here as a little bit of board litigation came up on exactly what counts as a tournament in Hyper Contender. There was a discussion after this game to try to increase the definition of this, so there's like actual hyper contender synergy with stuff. But currently, as written, this goal is intended to just be done in like the regular tournament mode. But I think Spoody ended up doing that in draft to try to get a little bit farther ahead there. Able to shake it off and bring it back to within a 5-5. But as we can see here, Red Robot is significantly ahead on have 4 items equipped, and all of a sudden is now threatening the vertical bingo as well as the column 4 bingo. Spoody's seeing the threat of that and understandably not wanting to go into Quibble Race is going to go ahead and do a head-to-head Cyber Owls Moscow race, and is just barely able to stay ahead of Red Robot here and clutch that one up, which not only blocks the middle column bingo here, but also starts to threaten Spoody's middle row bingo of his own. And friendly reminder, we're only 21 minutes into the match and it's tied 6-6 with both players having threatened their own different bingos at different points. Once again, it is a little difficult to recap A-tier games without just kind of sitting and watching A-tier play, because they are just so fast-paced and dense, and also going for like multiple goals at once, that it's sometimes a bit difficult to fully recap the things that are happening in between, because there's like 5 things that happen when I skip forward a little bit. But while Red Robot is attempting to block this middle row bingo with the Rock on Island goal, which makes sense in this situation because you don't necessarily know how many gifts Spoody has. And also it kind of makes sense to go for a goal that you can theoretically do faster in Rock On rather than Alphazar's Hat, which is pretty relatively set in stone, I guess. I shouldn't say pretty set in stone, but after that we do see a little bit of A-tier Quibble Race, which is always a treat. Red Robot's able to grab that fast, and then all of a sudden, like I've mentioned, even though it's tied 8-8, the momentum is just kind of rapidly swinging back and forth here, and Red Robot is able to start to threaten that column, or that row 4 bingo. We'll be attempting to just beat draft mode and then collect cherries on the card. And unfortunately for Red Robot, before he's able to clean out Hyper Contender, Spoody is able to grab the cherries, and with that all of the bingos are blocked and it's going to be going to majority. So at this point, up 9-8, Spoody is in a little bit better of a position, but since playoff games don't end in a tie, like if it's tied 9-9 or whatever, it'll end after the next space is gotten. The Dungus, what you doing, bud? You good? Dungus just sitting there menacingly. So a little bit further into this game, it's now tied 9-9 after 38 minutes, then 9-11 after 40 minutes. The pace of this game, as well as all of the A-tier games, basically worked out to about a minute or two per square, so fast forwarding is definitely not super easy to do. But in this position, when you're Spoody, you are able to pretty much grab whatever last 2 spaces on the board that you feel comfortable grabbing here. And obviously, since all of the remaining bingos are blocked, getting to 13 instantly ends the game, and you're good. So Spooty gonna go ahead and grab gifts, as well as the block Koala very hard, while Red Robot will essentially have to grab every space on the board, because Seaside Drive Stage 2 is a relatively quick goal in terms of like how many levels you have to play, but ends up actually kind of taking a minute to like complete. And then once it's 10 to 12, Red Robot will have to grab every space that's on the board. So Spooty, knowing that, is just going to hop into Block Koala and use his Comfort and Block Koala to be able to speed through the rest of the goals. And with that, it is 13 to 10, and Spooty takes the 1-0 game lead. Very well played by both players. There was a lot of good back and forth there with bingos and stuff that were pushed and then blocked and then pushed and then blocked by both sides. So you always like to see the good back and forth, especially in a game 1 of playoffs. So in game 2, we see once again Porgy collect 3 fuel tanks and Night Manor Gold Disc. And honestly, outside of that Big Bell Race goal, that entire row does look really fast. Another very, very quick center square and complete a day of deliveries, only driving in reverse as well. Speaking from personal experience, that goal is, or can be, I guess I should say, incredibly quick. It can also sometimes feel like straight up impossible if you get like a really bad delivery on your last day, but so wanting to run it back and feeling pretty comfortable at it, Red Robot is going to go ahead and once again collect 3 fuel tanks. And meanwhile, Spooty, not wanting to get sniped on that again, is going to go ahead and play some Magic Garden, which does count for Arcade Ace, and also Overgrow, which is the one that we're actually doing here, is a very quick square in that top row, and also contributes to the top row, the middle column, and is only 30 oppies in a run, which theoretically, if you get that done first, it is almost just as fast as the 3 fuel tanks. So, as we can tell from just chilling and watching this game for a bit, the pace of about 2 minutes per square is actually a little over what these players are able to accomplish in the beginning portion of this game. Laptop, you good? Okay, thank you. And Spooty is able to grab the onion delivery days in reverse, while Red Robot is able to push a bunch of bugs in pits. And all of a sudden, Spooty is already starting to threaten the middle column here. I don't think Red Robot directly sees that threat yet, or just perhaps wants to grab the Night Manor Gold Disc while it's still available. Meanwhile, Spooty will be pretty aggressively trying to push this middle column bingo here by getting some HP upgrades. Theoretically could be staying in to have 5 enemy discs drowned, but since that space wasn't marked off till later, I'm assuming that's not what happens here. But also, luckily for Spooty, increasing base HP does block the row 2 bingo that Red Robot did see and was at least starting to push a little bit here. During this time, we are able to block the keys more or less at about the same time Spoody's increasing max HP, although I guess there's an extra 4 minutes here. But hey Bramblin, how's it going? Good to see you. I think if the Raiders are down 31-9, I can turn off the game now. Mostly just annoyed because normally nobody else has to see our crap, and of course we're the Monday night game this week. But now with base HP there and Velgris there as well, both players have already in the first under 10 minutes of this game pushed their own bingo lines and also blocked their opponent's bingo lines. There's still plenty of other bingos that theoretically could be gotten, so this is still definitely at the point of the game where players are just trying to get fast goals. And even if you don't necessarily like Zoldath for other goals, just dropping off 4 items at your ship is generally a pretty fast goal. And Spoody, meanwhile, is going to be playing some tactics to try to score in survival mode, and also start to push the top row bingo. Something that I definitely have noticed players... Oh, my bad, I didn't see the other tactics goal. But now with Red Robot, it's kind of funny that Red Robot actually got to learn 3 skills in Grimstone and play Porgy in back-to-back games like that. I have noticed that sometimes the board generation for a brand new board has a funny habit of just taking the same goal and moving it somewhere else, basically. So like it is definitely like a different board, it just happens to have like a same goal or 2 on it. And ended up happening here, which made it a little bit easier for Red Robot to reclaim those spaces. And this time it is to his benefit, because now he's able to start pushing that bottom row bingo. But Spoody, to his credit, sees how valuable that Campanella 2 corner space is. And especially with how fast this game has gone. Any bingo lines that you could theoretically block while also starting to threaten your own bingo lines are definitely really helpful here. Spoody is eventually able to grab that, and then once again with 1 space, kind of flips this game on its head, and now suddenly Red Robot is looking like he's going to need to either grab gold discs or Big Bell Race gold disc to block this. And while gold disking Big Bell Race isn't particularly difficult, doing so without deaths can sometimes be pretty mean, because sometimes the AI just decides you're dead and there's like nothing you can really do about it. Clutch Camp 2. Oh, I did skip past the Clutch Camp 2. Let me rewind to that. I forgot exactly how clutch it was, but thank you, Hugh. If there's anything that I skip over that players or people want to like particularly see, I'm definitely fine with that. I know there was one game this season in Camp 2 where the player like completely ran out of fuel and ended up actually finding the door in time. But here we see a pretty similar situation where Spoody's just got to keep going up. And sometimes in more woods, it doesn't really feel like you can go up more. And in this specific situation, there's not really another way to go up. So Spoody's got to try to navigate, first of all, find out where the path up even is, which of course it's all the way on the left side of the map, and after this huge huge run here, takes damage, and at this point, if he touches any of these red guys, he's dead. And also losing $1 per frame, and if he runs out of money, he's also dead. But was able to clutch it up there, find the door after the time had expired, and thankfully money doesn't matter at this point, so as long as Spoody's able to get through this, he should be good. And as we saw by slightly fast forwarding, he was able to grab that. Then I think we see a little bit of Big Bow Race, but not enough for the gold disc with no deaths. Most likely just for the gift, if I had to guess, you know. But after getting the gifts, sort of pushing an interesting situation where a Big Ball Race gold disc actually does quite a lot for both players. Spooty would obviously much rather just chill in a tactics for a little bit and play that instead, which both blocks this bingo and also starts to kind of threaten the top row bingo. Since both of Spooty's major bingo opportunities at this point are going to rely on gold disc, and Magic Garden still hasn't been played yet for one, Red Robot's just going to go ahead and grab that pretty quick. And both players are able to grab their spaces here, and then we see, honestly, a pretty rare head-to-head in Mini and Max. I feel like you don't really get to see Mini and Max head-to-heads very often, and normally not in like the middle of a game. Like normally if you see a Mini and Max head-to-head, it's kind of like one of the super fast goals, and it's just a race of that. But we do get to see a little bit of a race in trying to return the stolen termite egg, which is one of the harder Mini and Max goals. Definitely not the hardest one, but definitely a tricky one because these ants will one-shot you and sometimes just have weird hitboxes like that. And Fierce Booty, that's pretty common. Also, I forget if I said it, but hi Hugh, how's it going? Just chuck that egg over there. It's gonna get there somewhere, right? Just gotta find it again. And while Spooty was definitely very close on that goal, Red Robot was able to come back after that grab. And I believe with that, the only bingo that is available at all is the column 1 bingo. Red Robot does have a 2-point advantage here, but I think Spooty would rather just confirm that this game is definitely not going to bingo. But as Mora mentioned in the chat, the main races in this game and last game were the Moscow race and last game, and the Mini and Max one in this one. Mini and Max, for being as late as it was in the game, didn't actually directly help advance any bingos for either player. But obviously the amount of time you lose from getting sniped on a goal that you were actively working on is sometimes enough of a setback of its own. And after Red Robot is able to grab the really quick Bushido ball square, sort of in a reverse situation from last game, Red Robot's going to attempt to push the Vanger stuff here. Did hop into Vanger earlier to grab the Heat mod as a quick gift, but didn't make any direct progress on it after that. We do get a pretty tense head-to-head here, and Vanger as well, but as we can see, Red Robot is able to get through this situation with Verde Skip a little bit faster, and even though the boss is continuing to be the boss, I feel like this boss is pretty mean. Red Robot is able to clutch it up there, grab the key code, and did see enough of an opportunity to be able to open up Camouflage here and just get going on it before changing his mind and deciding if he wants to go to Majority or Bingo instead. And then Spooty's in a pretty unenviable situation here where he's either forced to block the Bingo with the Camouflage very hard, which even when you do quick is still like 10 minutes. And as a reminder, this match has been going on for 30 minutes. So, while 10 minutes is not really that much time when you know what you're doing, it would definitely give Red Robot enough time to be able to just win the rest of this game at that point. So Spoody, I think, calling that bluff, is going to go ahead and just try to grab another quick space while it's available. And meanwhile, Red Robot was able to grab Rock-On and then just pop into Waldorf to be able to grab the third arcade game with Belgrass, Magic Garden, and Waldorf, and win 13-9. So at this point in the game, it is tied up with both players having one win. So whoever wins the next game advances to the A-tier finals. And as we can see from this board, Red Robot was able to pick up another 13-9 win. Let me get that tab back. Oh, cool. That's in the order that I opened it in, which means it is not in order. Cool and helpful. Thank you. Normally I exit out of the games after every round, but also normally there's not like 3 games in a row. Hi Nitro, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. Unsurprisingly, I'm less salty now that I turned the radars off. Amazing how that happens. Alright, and good news for the players. They did not have Porgy complete or deliver 3 fuel tanks on the board. Perhaps, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Mooncat used 2 warps is pretty much just as fast. And even the long spaces on this board are not really that long. So we do see Red Robot immediately rushing for that center square, while Spoody takes a different approach and just grabs the Nightmare Gold Disc from the corner. Both are pretty valuable spots on the board and also have really quick goals. But if you aren't like 1,000,000% comfortable with your Mooncat stuff, it can be pretty easy to get sniped on it. And I think Spoody just wants to make sure that he's putting pressure on the board, while Red Robot obviously wants the center square that's really fast. Both players are able to grab that. Spoody's also able to use the advantage of knowing how long Nightmare Gold Disc takes to hold that square for a little bit, as he's able to complete another level of Warp Tank. At this point in the game, obviously it's a little early for most people to be considering holds, but knowing exactly how long it takes to do a space kind of allows you more comfort in being able to hold a square for a little bit longer. And Nightmare Gold Disc is one that is very, very consistent, even at like top level. Like there's not really a ton you can do to speed it up or whatever. So within the first 3 minutes of the match, we already have 4 squares marked off, as both players are just blasting through whatever they want to do. Pretty similar to the first 2 matches, both players are also making sure to block their opponents as efficiently as possible. And with the score advanced to 3-3, none of any of the spaces on the board are linking together in any like meaningful way for a bingo. Like there are isolated bingo threats that are being formed from all of these, but it seems at this point in the match that players are more concerned with just taking advantage of how fast this board actually is. Maybe we could just skip my match. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I'm not even 100% sure how, like, able I am to recap stuff tonight. If I wasn't so busy for the rest of the week, I probably would have just pushed this to a different day, because work kind of was draining today. And then I made the mistake of watching football when I got home, and my team is terrible. It's not normally a good idea, but especially not now. But that's okay. I'm glad that we're able to do this. I did, by the way, mention that For those that are waiting for the Underground Bingo recap, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to have time to do those, at least as intimately as I have for Season 2. I would like to, but I also wasn't really planning on really organizing the Underground Bingo thing until like a week or two before the season was ending. And while I am happy to organize it and stuff, it is kind of a lot of work to organize something and then also recap it for hours and hours each week. So we'll try to find out some way to recap it, even if it's not like a full-on, like, we're gonna watch every second of every game kind of thing. But I did want to bring that up now that we have other people in here. Thanks. It's just been draining. And while I am totally fine to be doing recaps and stuff, I was planning on having a mental health day tomorrow that I think I'm going to have to push off for a couple of reasons, and definitely I'm just feeling that I need to take a day off soon, so maybe even just one day off will be enough to recharge me and make me more energized to be able to do stuff. But obviously without energy it is a little harder to want to do stuff all the time. We do get to see a perfect in paint chase, by the way. Spoody is exceptionally consistent at those. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'll figure it out. I wanted to mention that while there were actually people here, because I said it earlier, but I think it was before I even started recapping anything, so. But getting back to the game at hand, we can see with the 8 spaces that are marked on the board, again, no real bingo threats being formed, but I think with all 5 of the spaces that Red Robot has already blocked any chance that Spoody could possibly have at a bingo. And meanwhile, Spoody still has a couple of bingos to block for Red Robot, but it does seem like it is likely that this game is also going to go to majority, just with the way the spaces have laid out. As we get a little bit farther in, again, 10 spaces marked in 12 minutes means that it's kind of hard to like really advance this game too much without like missing a lot of action. And as we can kind of see, that pace just continues through the rest of this game as well. Red Robot starting to push that column 2 bingo, and obviously that is the most direct bingo threat that's actually being pushed right now. Luckily for Spoody, makes the correct 50-50 here of trying to figure out if Valbrace or Campanella is more valuable. For Red Robot, the Campanella 2 space is more valuable because it does also start to push the row 2 bingo. But for Spoody, more concerned was just trying to do a fast goal as quick as possible. Both players are able to grab those spaces more or less at the similar time. Red Robot does actually make the push into Valbrace and ends up starting to threaten this bingo, but luckily Spoody's been in here long enough and knows the gem puzzles well enough that he's just able to grab that and block it. And then suddenly, the only bingo threats that are even present on the board are row 2 and the middle column, which currently doesn't have anything on it, but could soon. So Spoody rushes to beat 2 levels in 8 different games, while Red Robot starts to push that middle column bingo. Both players are basically able to get their goals at the same time here. And at this point in the game, it is going to majority, at which point Red Robot has a 3-point advantage. A lot of this game did come down to the early portion of the game where players were just kind of scooping up spaces, and Red Robot was able to... It's hard to even say, like, be more efficient, because both players were grabbing spaces within, like, a minute or so of each other. But the spaces that Red Robot happened to target were like just slightly faster than the ones that Spoody was trying to target. So even though 25 minutes into the match, we have a total of 15 spaces marked off. The advantage is pretty heavily leaning Red Robot here. Obviously, especially seeing as how the longer you get into the game, obviously the longer goals are left. It's pretty rare to get a board of like nothing but 25 straight super fast goals. And the early advantage definitely does start to push, I guess, if you're a Red Robot, and also starts to feel a little heavier if you're Spooty. Because Red Robot at this point basically just needs 4 points to move to finals. But Spooty's in a position where he has to catch up 3 points to tie it, and then still win everything. And in Spooty's situation, you're basically just forced to hope that the squares that you're targeting are the ones that Red Robot's also targeting, and that you can do them faster, and that you're actually like wasting significant time for Red Robot, like getting sniped on those. And a little unfortunately, Spooty seems to be working, I guess I should say, on a different goal. Rewinding very slightly, Spooty did actually escape with 5 babies and then switch over to the Rail Heist goal here, and is working to collect all 3 stars on 3 different levels while Red Robot is working on camouflage. You can kind of start to see in the bottom right corner, chat's starting to freak out here. Because if Red Robot is able to complete this next stage with the baby, then he is able to grab that space. And within the final level, it's seeming like Spooty is going to hold the square a little too long and get sniped while working on this Rail Heist level and trying to mark it. But after running up here, grabbing the money, escaping to Mr. Blue, Red Robot is on his way back over to grab the 5th level here and get sniped on 5 babies. So big play for Spooty there. One that I definitely wanted to highlight because I remember that happening live and kind of losing my mind about it. We've talked a lot in these recap shows how it is very hard to hold spaces, and it's even harder to hold spaces to the point where your opponent gets like really screwed over by them. And that objectively was like pretty much a perfect hold if you're Spooty, because you were able to finish the goal, do almost all of another goal, and snipe your opponent before they were able to really do anything in that situation. And when you're down by 3 and eventually 2 points, those are the kinds of snipes and plays that you need to be able to actually like come back in the game. And unfortunately at this point, even with that like fantastic of a play, Spooty essentially has to do that another like 2 to 3 times to be able to tie this game back up. And at this point in the match, it's pretty much just a guessing game from both players, where Red Robot is trying to do the goals that he's not likely to get sniped on and just can finish whenever, and Spooty's in the position where he has to catch up on spaces or snipe pretty aggressively, and trying to make the read that Red Robot is just going to pop into Star Wasper, since theoretically Wave 3 is pretty fast. Spooty is able to get to Wave 3 pretty quickly, and does unfortunately, despite having 2 lives here, it does unfortunately end up losing this round. Star Wasper Wave 3 just unfortunately does that sometimes. By pretty much every account of anyone who's played extensive UFO 50, Star Wasper is the hardest level in the game, kind of by a mile, honestly. And even in A tier, people don't particularly want to go out of their way to play Star Wasper, specifically because of how hard this wave is. And for those who haven't seen it, this is pretty average in the wave. You don't run into these red guys, thankfully, in every other level, but they are here in the hardest level to make it even harder. All of the purple asteroids in the back have hitboxes and can kill you. You have to deal with 4 of these green guys that were mini-bosses in the previous stage, and 2 of the actual stage 1 bosses, plus the actual boss. And it's just like pretty much generously calling it a final exam. And even with all of that happening, Spoody was almost able to hang out in the middle of the green fire there until a random green shot came and blocked his only way out of there. And during that time, Red Robot was able to complete most of an Onion Delivery Gold Disc, and is eventually able to grab it here. Spoody does end up being able to clear Wave 3 here, and attempts to parlay that into an Onion Delivery Gold Disc. Or not an Onion Delivery Gold Disc, a Star Wasper Gold Disc. And gets pretty far into Wave 4 and ends up losing a life like just before this boss. And for those that don't know, if you have an extra life heading into the final boss, you can kind of just park your ship over where he ends up coming in, instantly kill him, and win the game. But without that, you gotta do things the old-fashioned way, like Spoody's doing here, and actually sit at the bottom of the screen and shoot and kill. So even more tension added to an already tense run of this game. Star Wasper is definitely a very difficult game, and is also one that a lot of players don't really try to go for ever. But it is a gold disc that's on this card, and at this point, if you're Spoody, you definitely got to grab all of the synergy possible that is remotely available to you. And if you're Red Robot, meanwhile, you just need to get another 2 points on the board, and are just going to start to work on gifts from games on this card to be able to grab space number 12. And if you're Spoody, again, you're basically going to more or less need every space of this game, because unless you're sniping Red Robot on every single space that's left, pretty likely that Red Robot's going to get at least another space in the next, like, hour and a half. And if you're Red Robot, you kind of just gotta play defensively and pick the games that you think that you can do, but also that you can do while Spoody is like not actively racing you in them. And to Spoody's credit, he does end up actually getting through Caramel score most of 50k pretty quickly. But did take a hit in the middle of the Meteor stage, and gets all the way up. I forget exactly how high the score gets. Oh wow, this is unfortunately much closer than I even thought it was. So within the final 2k of this score, that guy pops up kind of out of nowhere. And unfortunately, when you die in Caramel, your score resets, and at that point, the game's pretty much over. Like, while Spoody would have been able to grab a little bit of advantage from Red Robot hopping in here, that specific death at 48,000 points sort of sealed the game there. And then at this point, if you're Spoody, you're kind of just hoping that Red Robot also messes up at this point. But unfortunately for Spoody / fortunately for Red Robot, he is able to grab the 50k. And yeah, when you're down 9 to 12, you do need every single space that's on the board. So might as well try some Clover Race stuff at this point. But Red Robot is able to grab that. Interestingly, also has a pretty close call here in Caramel, where he takes a hit on the stage and has to be pretty careful that an enemy doesn't just randomly run into him. But is able to pull that off and win 13 to 9. Very well played game by both players. as I kind of highlighted in the first portion of the stream, was extremely back and forth the entire time. And both players definitely played well, played like they were in A-tier semifinals, and gave us a great game. Okay. So, next up is the other A-tier. The other A-tier semifinal is Cosmoing versus Matt. Again, both players have played very well all season. And again, we get to see Porky make an appearance. The only Porky never showed up in any of my games, but it's all over finals apparently. So, here, I'd say this is a slower start to the game. It's been 1 minute and a space is still marked off, but given how fast the A-tier games have gone, even a minute going by without spaces is kind of shocking sometimes. But just casually looking at this board while players are doing their thing here. Mortal 2 Gold Disc is kind of a bingo classic. It was everywhere in Season 1 and surprisingly less so in Season 2. But probably for the best that it is more rare now because it's kind of more of a treat when it shows up. Mortal 2 Gold Disc is fast. Bug Hunter completing a job is fast. Honestly, the Rock on Island goal can be sometimes fast, but most of the time it's kind of just sitting and looking at the board and learning stuff. Minnie and Max saving a brainwashed mouse is fast. And interestingly, the second half of this board is a lot longer than the first half of this board. So depending on how this specific game ended up going, the pace of the match definitely could have slowed down like quite a lot in the second half of stuff. With Cosmoing grabbing the center square and the caramel one, 6 minutes into this match, neither player is like really super directly threatening a bingo line, and is mostly just working on trying to grab the quick spaces that are on this board, but also worth mentioning that this board doesn't really have a lot of like cross synergy, where typically if you're working on a space in bingo, it's generally better to like grab a space that also works on another space. So like if you're, for example, working in Mooncat, it's better to do that if you're able to also grab beat X amount of levels or a gift or whatever. But like just the way this board laid out, there wasn't really a lot of cross synergy stuff for that. It ended up actually kind of happening a lot in bingo this week, where players were sort of forced to just kind of sit in a game, do a thing, get credit for that one thing, and then move on. Which, if you're playing, or like if you're not playing bingo, that sounds like a little straightforward or whatever. But being able to identify those like hidden synergies in boards is definitely something that starts to come up the more that you play bingo. And a little interesting this week that didn't really end up happening. And instead we just kind of got a lot of like work on this space and you get this space boards. Yeah, Mortal 2 is definitely a lot less common because of the on this card thing. It is interesting that like even with that minor of a restriction, you still don't see it super often though. Like obviously if you have to Gold Disc Rush and Mortal 2's on the card, a lot of the times you'll see it, but even with a Mortal 2 Gold Disc space and still being able to theoretically do it every time it's on a card, I feel like it's not exactly like the first thing people jump to as often. In here we do get to see a little bit of head-to-head bean drip. This theoretically is a pretty fast goal because all you have to do is score 6k points in the Campanella bonus game. Both players extremely comfortable in Campanella, but Matt is just barely not able to grab that one as Cosmowing is able to finish it in 2 minutes. And then suddenly, very, very much threatening that top row bingo. We don't actually see either player trying to push that bingo or block that bingo at this point. And instead see Matt working on the Rock on Island goal while Cosmowing uses his warm-up to grab 25 lives in Campanella, which also will be a gift. There are still some small synergies with the gifts and spaces on this board. Yeah, this Rock On goal in particular, even as a Rock On fan, is not necessarily my favorite to watch or commentate over, just because it ends up kind of devolving into this, where you just have maxed out power, and then just sit there and kill stuff over and over again. And, like, the only wave that even, like, gets past this point is a little bit in this wave, and a little bit in wave 10. And even then, if you just kill most of the guys in wave 10, you're able to beat the level perfectly fine without cavemen. It just becomes a little bit more annoying. So after Cosmowing does grab the 25 lives in Campanella, we do start to see a little bit of a push to block the top 5 on 4 arcade leaderboards here. And meanwhile, we see Cosmowing shift over to finishing up gifts and just trying to threaten as many different lines as possible and force Matt to basically just play on the back foot the entire time. Even though Cosmowing is only up by 3 at this point, which is still definitely like a manageable distance if you're Matt to come back from, is still pretty aggressively having to block all of these bingo lines that are starting to form. And to his credit, Matt is doing a really good job of identifying the like high value spaces that block a lot that are still reasonably fast to do. And yeah, skip a little bit farther ahead. So once Matt grabs the top 5 and 4, the only major bingo threat that's being pushed by either player is the column 4 for Cosmowing and this diagonal line by Matt. There are some other minor bingos that can happen at this point, but I think if you're both players at this point in the game, that's kind of more what you're focusing on. And after Cosmowing's able to grab the gifts, is going to pop back in for the 5th level Block Koala. And once Cosmowing is able to grab this Block Koala space, that does effectively block Matt out of any bingo that could be gotten on his end. There are still a couple of pretty pressing bingo opportunities that Matt has to block. Obviously getting the center square in most boards is pretty helpful, but unfortunately for Matt, it's not quite as helpful as it seems like it could be. I think at this point in the game, if Matt was able to theoretically get Block Koala and just instantly mark off the Porgy stuff, he would be okay. But obviously Cosmowing is able to mark that off after one more level here. And I don't actually know if Matt saved his Porgy progress. Like, I know he got back, but I didn't see if he actually saved anything. So either way, after a little bit of blocking in, the major bingo threat that is now being pushed, since Matt was able to grab that center square, Minnie and Max have 150 shinies without obtaining the shrink potion. This goal, for what it's worth, did get updated this season and requires you to obtain 150 shinies at once, which does mean that all of the shopping that Cosmowing's doing is actually sort of putting him farther away from the goal and not closer to the goal. Depending on how comfortable you are in Mini and Max, this is sometimes not really that big of a deal. But unfortunately, depending on your comfort in Mini and Max, this can sometimes end up like wasting more shinies than you actually end up recovering.
So you have to ask yourself the question.
And for those that are confused, the shrink potion is the one that allows you to get down to the micro world. You're still able to shrink down far enough to just kind of explore around most of the map. I also think it's interesting that the Mortal 2 goals are hard to pivot into Cherry Disc. Yeah, so that was kind of another reason I brought it up. A lot of the games that are in Bingo are a little easier to just transition it into a Cherry Disc or a Gold Disc or whatever. But a lot of the times, if you're playing Mortal 2, it's kind of like one or the other. If you want a Gold Disc it or Cherry... Gold is a little bit easier. But especially if you're trying to cherry stuff and also do another bingo goal at the same time, it can actually be kind of hard. Because the route that you typically take to just finish the game is kind of different from a lot of the bingo goals. And while lives are pretty plentiful in Mortal 2, they're not like infinite. So you do have to be kind of careful about it. Okay, I also did this goal, the Mini and Max goal, the other day. So I was just trying to pay attention to see exactly where Cosmoling goes here. It is a little interesting that Cosmoling opted to not grab all of the shinies that are in the alarm clock like I did. Because the alarm clock is kind of far away, but you get like a free like 20 or 25 shinies on the way there. And it is kind of just a lot of pretty quick walking. Also for flip ups. Sorry if that skipped forward a lot, but anyway, after good job. That was from across the house in the shower. I'm not sure if that got picked up on mic, but okay. I forget that this full screen is just gonna have to do for this, even though it's a little bit cut off. So at this point in the game, obviously it's a pretty direct head-to-head in trying to defeat two bosses in 4 different games. Cosmoing does have a little bit of an advantage from this, given how the early portion of the game went, and also that he played pretty far through Campanella 1 to be able to get the high score there. So after getting through Fistel for the final game, is able to pick up the 10-7 bingo win. And yeah, honestly in that game both players played well. Cosmoing just had the advantage of grabbing the quicker spaces first and starting to push 4 bingo lines and forced Matt to play a little bit more defensively. Matt, to his credit, was able to play defensively and block pretty much everything. And then that head-to-head Mini and Max into the defeat 2 bosses. And honestly, even with the block koala, even though that wasn't like as direct of a snipe, started to push that bingo line really fast and was just able to kind of squeeze it in time. Alright. So, counter to all of the other A-tier matches we've seen so far, the center square on this board takes forever to do. Even when you know where a lance weapon's at, it can sometimes take a little while. And generally in bingo games, if the center square is going to take a while, you'll definitely see players kind of just skip past it for a while. Because while the center square in a bingo does obviously help with like the most amount of bingos possible, it's not necessarily always the best idea to go for if it's a really long goal. And as we start off this game, that definitely is the case. We get a head-to-head in Felgress defeat all enemies in level 1 using only your blaster. which theoretically, I've mentioned this pretty much every time I've seen this goal. Theoretically, this is one of the fastest goals in Bingo because all you're doing is playing level 1 of Velgress. But even for someone who is as exceptionally comfortable in Velgress as either of these players are, but especially Matt, this goal takes a lot of focus because normally in Velgress you are just trying to kind of fly up as quick as possible. And in this one you actually need to pay attention, make sure that you are killing everything along the way. Make sure that nothing gets stuck in a weird, like, underhang. And also, obviously, like, making it through Velgress. And doing all of that in a row and rushing everything is sometimes a lot to ask for. But we do see Cosmoing grab that space and then parlay it into a gold disc. We also are going to see a pretty quick attempt at defeating all 3 mini bosses in Mortal 2 without using them, or without damaging them as the bomber. Kind of mentioned it a lot last game, but the Mortal 2 bingo goals are kind of difficult, honestly. Like, I feel like even as someone who's pretty comfortable in Mortal 2, the Mortal 2 bingo goals are just kind of difficult things that are asked of you. For example, even just defeating these 3 mini-bosses can sometimes be a pain. But doing it without damaging them with the unit that you normally damage them with is obviously much more time-consuming. So in this early portion of this game, I would honestly say that Matt did a slightly better job of identifying like the really quick goals that are on here and just attempting to push those. As Dom highlighted, the diagonals for both players are going to be pretty strong in this game, which theoretically could and does end up forcing divers a little bit earlier than I think either player would maybe have preferred to go into divers. We see more Block Koala, which we saw a lot of Block Koala this season, to be honest, and as a Block Koala fan, I am happy with that. This is another goal where theoretically it's pretty fast, and definitely delivers on that. Beating 3 levels without using the undo button is a really, really quick goal, and it's one that you can thankfully bank a little bit of progress in, depending on how you're feeling about other spaces that are on the board. We do get a head-to-head in Onion Delivery to have 10 deliveries made on the day's counter. Again, this theoretically is doable within the first level of the game, and most of the time you should be doing it on the first level because the deliveries are closer together. This is thankfully one of the more generous Onion Delivery goals, like even if you're not super comfortable with Onion Delivery. And after Cosmowing is able to grab that, starts to pretty directly push this diagonal bingo and works to obtain a lance weapon. The lance is either really, really far away or kind of far away and requires some RNG. Here we're seeing Cosmowing push for the really far away one that is still relatively consistent. But just because you have to go pretty far out of your way through the second area and then come back up through the first, this goal does end up taking a little bit. And during that time, Matt is able to do a pretty strong gift rush here. Block the bingo while Cosmowing's running back with the lance. And with the score tied 3-3, and with the spaces that are on the board, it's actually Matt currently who is able to start pushing his own bingo line and working to max out 4 upgrades at once, while Cosmowing is still trying to make his way back with the lance weapon. Once you get back out of the ruins area, you're generally okay for this goal, but even with the flippers and even with pretty clean movement, this goal just kind of takes a little while. So is able to obtain the lance weapon, and Matt is then also able to quickly grab the block koala square, go up 5-4, and pretty directly threaten the right column bingo, which completing a day of Bug Hunter is sometimes long, but not if you're an A tier. So once Cosmoing is able to grab that and tie it back up 5-5, I think at this point the only bingos that's even left are the two column 1 and column 4 bingos for Cosmoing, and the bottom row bingo for Matt. And with Cosmoing working on a tactics to be able to block that bottom bingo and also start to push one of his own, even though the score is tied 5-5, the spaces that were on this board that were quick are pretty much now gone. And even with Matt working to obtain the rod and the blood sword to be able to block this column bingo, this goal can sometimes just take a little while. The rod is farther away than the blood sword is, but can still sometimes take a bit. I didn't even notice Reach the Abyss and Porgy was on this board until Cosmoing just marked it off, but yeah, at this point in the game, with Cosmoing up 7-5 and pushing both of the last bingos that are left, Matt has to both play defensively and also offensively, and also hope that he's able to just kind of snipe Cosmoing on a couple of spaces and also block stuff. Thankfully, if you're Matt, you have a pretty good idea that Cosmoing is working on most likely this bingo line, just because it is the most direct one left. But this bingo threat is still available, which Cosmoing is obviously going to go ahead and push now. And also, a little synergistically for Cosmoing, grabbing 5 babies and different levels of camouflage will also...
Babies? Sorry.
Lizard babies, but yes.
You said 5 babies. Like capybara babies.
I did say 5 babies like capybara babies, it's true.
Sorry. I've been real good at being quiet this whole time.
That's okay.
And I had things to say, trust me. I said them in my head.
No, bud. It's okay. Grabbing the baby lizards and camouflage does help with the completion of the library, which is the other very hard that's on the board. Not one that like super directly threatens anything really, but when you're playing in these bingo matches, like I mentioned, it's generally a good thing to try to work on a couple of different spaces at once if you can. And while Matt is able to pretty effortlessly fly through Velgress here, Cosmoing's advantage with camouflage pretty much just immediately then pushes the other column bingo here. And at this point, if you're Matt, you're in kind of a lose-lose situation where you kind of just have to hope that you're guessing everything correctly here. And unfortunately for Matt, Cosmoing's just kind of able to clean up goals as the game goes on. Both players are able to beat their goals at pretty much the same time. I think there was a little bit of holding going back and forth, but we do get a head-to-head in Big Bell Race, which honestly you don't really get to see super often. I feel like a lot of the times, myself included, Big Bell Race is a game that players tend to try to avoid unless they like have to play it. And yeah, once in the situation where healing sector's beaten here, and Matt was able to grab the Buddha blood and blood sword and rod, Matt still will need pretty much back-to-back snipes to be able to even tie the game back up, while Cosmoing is just kind of hoping to chill in goals that can sometimes take a little bit longer, but are less likely to be sniped in, while Matt has to pretty much grab everything that's left on the board. And while we are able to bring the differential a little bit closer, Cosmoing is able to kind of just hold that advantage, grab the long spaces, and eventually win 13-9. So very well played by both sides. GG's both, and looking forward to the Red Robot versus Cosmoing finals in A tier. Should be fun.
I was like, yeah, we beat you, because I'm an Eagles fan now.
Do you know any other player on the team?
No. I think I have some other ones on my fantasy teams, but Jalen Hurts all the way, baby. Look at his smile. He's so cute. The only man I still like.
I guess so.
Well, him and Dicker the kicker. Dicker the kicker never lets me down. Jalen Hurts sometimes lets me down, but not as bad as the tight ends on any team this season.
Yes.
Don't you love hearing me talk football? Like I kind of know what I'm talking about.
You know, just enough to talk about it. That's all that
I don't
matters.
watch the games, but I know things.
So, as I've had up on the board and haven't super talked about yet, we are in V1 playoffs now, and this is the first ever playoff shutout.
V1?
Yep,
Sorry, that was my shutout.
I said shutout, not shout out.
I thought you said shutout.
It's fine.
Shut out.
Shoutouts to shutouts, I guess.
That was my shutout.
So, on this board, Planet Zoldath have 2 of each resource at once is a very, very fast center square. Theoretically, if you get really lucky, you're able to get this pretty much right away. Yeah. And meanwhile, Keeney is going for one of the fastest squares slash gifts possible. And is also actually pretty helpful just to have in Gulf area in general. Obtaining the blockbuster can theoretically be done in 1 round, as we're seeing here. And meanwhile, Hugo is attempting to gather resources in Planet Zoldath. I think I have to basically not fast forward in this match because of how fast it ended up going. But while we are attempting to gather some resources on Hugo's end, Keeney is able to grab the blockbuster and then immediately pop into Alphazar's hat. Alphazar's hat is sometimes pretty mean with this goal. Having 3 level 2 upgrades at once basically means that you have to get 3 of a kind in 3 different suits, which sometimes is really easy, and then sometimes the game just doesn't give you the pieces that you need and you end up having to play like all of level 1. Given how fast this goal went, I'm assuming that this was relatively painless for Keeney. And you can see here that they already have shot upgrade. I guess I don't know if life upgrade actually directly counts for that, so I'm going to go ahead and watch that now just to personally confirm this. But after a little bit of bad luck in Planet Zoldath, we do see the pivot from Hugo, as Keeney is able to grab Alphazar's hat right away. Hugo, in that time, was trying to load Alphazar's hat to be able to grab that square, but then just unfortunately wasn't able to do it in time. That little bit of extra time allowed Keeney to pop into Bushido Ball and set the rules ahead of time. And from personal experience, Keeney is exceptionally good at this specific goal and racing this specific goal, so pretty much able to blast through here. Hugo playing the slightly slower but sometimes safer route of Tomoe. As I've seen this goal played more and more, I'm pretty convinced that Tomoe in this specific goal is maybe not it, but coming from a Tomoe main myself, I definitely understand it. And in this specific situation, Kini is already starting to threaten the bottom row bingo, which forces Hugo to react pretty directly. Either the Ben's Mode cheat or Campanella Trilogy are going to be pretty long goals here. And knowing that, Kini is going to go ahead and use that advantage and push forward with pushing a different bingo here. Something that you'll see a lot in higher tiers, and honestly even into lower tiers now, but something you'll definitely start to see a lot in higher tiers is players pushing one bingo and then just kind of working on another one, knowing how long it would take to theoretically do like either the Ben's Mode space or Campanella Trilogy. Just basically instead cashing in that time that Hugo would be spent blocking that bingo to work on another one. And understandably staying in to grab a gift while we're here, and then pivoting into Planet Zoldath on their own. As we saw earlier in this match, sometimes Planet Zoldath can just kind of be a little rude with its resource generation, and sometimes it is incredibly generous. Given how quickly Kini was able to mark this off, it seems like the Zoldath gods were shining on them for this one. And as everyone is mentioning in chat now, now seeing exactly how fast that column 3 is, especially since Kini does have the gift from Gulf Area, the gift from Onion Delivery, and after this goal was marked, Planet Zoldath marked off. And if you're Hugo, this is pretty much exactly what you didn't want to happen in this match. Losing the head-to-head in Bushido Ball did force Hugo to respect the threat of the bottom bingo, which gave Kini enough time to almost completely pivot off of that and instead grab a much faster bingo. At this point, Hugo is unfortunately kind of locked into Campanella 2 just to be able to get the progress for Camp Trilogy, while Kini is able to win race 1 without boosters. And then it's just a pretty much straight up gift rush at this point. Hugo does see the threat of that forming, but is unfortunately behind by 4 gifts at this point, and is able to win 7-0 in 18 minutes. Obviously, that was a pretty dominant performance from Kini, being able to grab really whatever space they wanted to. Refraining from commenting on the shape, because obviously that's a little obvious. Just being able to threaten a bottom row bingo and then immediately have the knowledge to pivot off of that. And then just being able to identify that one of the spaces that they did get early in the game was actually part of a much faster bingo line is definitely very impressive and tough to do. And the board lined up pretty well for these players being able to get goals fast. Obviously, if Hugo was able to snipe even 1 or 2 of those goals to be able to block that game theoretically went pretty differently. But kudos to Kini for being able to grab the spaces both while they were there and also just doing it really efficiently. And yeah, a very good season for Hugo. Obviously, the semifinals maybe didn't go exactly the way that they wanted to go, but if you're Keeney, you pretty much went exactly the way you wanted it to go. And
Did you hear me burp from the shower? Is that what that is?
yep,
Stop it.
I don't know if stream actually heard, but I did. So
You sure did.
yep.
That's funny. Sorry, I just saw the red.
That's okay.
Cause it felt just through. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's shocking how cursed Hugo is, considering how few times he's ever lost. Yeah, so
This is yours.
for what it's worth, Hugo and I had an absolutely fantastic match last week where it came down to like 5 head-to-heads and just ended up kind of working out where we split both the head-to-heads, and it was like a really, really close game. It sometimes in bingo it really just comes down to like the early portion of that game and exactly how that ends up shaping out. And unfortunately for Hugo, obviously that was a tough way for that one to shake out, but still definitely one of the top players in B tier, and wouldn't really surprise me if they were still moved up anyway. And then obviously Keeney is very well deserving of the finals as well, and they've been playing exceptionally well, so joining them in finals is the winner of Dom versus Flesh. I actually got to cast this game with Karma and Vanilla, and it ended up being a really fun time. An interesting kind of middle ground of Warp Tank Collect 5 Coffees, where Collect 5 Coffees is theoretically a kind of fast goal, but oh, is this too? With Dom versus Flesh, this is a game where both players, again, being in B1, both players played this entire season really, really well, and both players are really comfortable at the entire collection. I think by Flesh's own admission, the main thing that was holding him back in Bingo Season 1 was just that he didn't have as wide of a collection of like games that he knew super well for Bingo, but obviously worked on that exceptionally well and is now very well rounded and also just really good at Bingo. And same for Dom. Dom's definitely been playing really well all season and doing the same thing that Keeney's been doing, where he'll threaten one bingo line, then work on another bingo line, which starts to threaten like completely different goals that the players haven't been working on at all. And definitely both players are really good at controlling the pace of the game. And already early into the game, Dom is starting to threaten the column 5 bingo. And if you're Flesh, you're not 100% certain where Dom will be attacking next. Dom at this point in the game, being that it's only under 5 minutes in, is just going to go ahead and try to slay the water bear, while Flesh is starting to work on collecting torpedo upgrades, which both players kind of independently pushing their own column of bingos while trying to advance other bingos, but mostly kind of just grabbing spaces that they feel that they're comfortable with. So going a little bit farther ahead, after collecting 5 coffees, Flesh is actually more aggressively pushing a couple of bingo lines here, both the column 2 and diagonal, while Dom is just pushing the column 5 bingo at this point. So while the score is tied 3-3, it is tough to really give advantage to either player at this point, but if there is an advantage, it would probably go to Flesh, even though Dom has the third square first right now. Dom is able to collect 5 items in Danger while Dom finishes up Star Wasper. And then we get a very, very intense and honestly pretty rare Golf Area head-to-head. The Skullferia collect 3 clubs goal is pretty important for both players, where either Dom will immediately be able to push 2 bingos at the same time, or Flesh will be able to block 2 bingos at the same time. So even though the score is tied 4-4, this entire game at this point, even though it's only 17 minutes in, is coming down to a direct head-to-head of who can get 3 clubs in Golfaria first, which does sort of just come down to who's the most comfortable in Golfaria and who can get that little mushroom skip that we saw both players get. Both players were able to get it at pretty much the same time, as after a little bit of struggle lining it up, just because it's kind of an awkward lineup. And then at that point it just comes down to who is more comfortable in navigating Golfaria to the 3rd club. We do see the routes slightly diverge here, where Dom is going for what I think is technically more optimal, while Flesh is going a little bit farther to be able to grab one that's pretty safe, and is just barely able to mark that off, while Dom is like within 1 stroke of being able to grab the clubs. And with that amount of time, Flesh pretty much blocked off every bingo that Dom's actually working on right now. Dom still does have the top row bingo that I guess he's got a little bit of progress in. And seeing that threat, Dom identifies that the Hyper Contender win 4 fights in 1 tournament goal, while playing a decent amount of Hyper Contender is definitely the one to go for, both because it blocks the diagonal bingo and also because it starts to push this top one a bit. And meanwhile, Flesh is going to stay in for Blockbuster for Golfaria and then start to push gifts, and is able to eventually get gifts, and Dom is then able to grab the Hyper Contender square. Neither player is super directly threatening bingos at this time, although I guess the advantage on that did shift back over to Dom with the top row. But both players at this point are just kind of trying to grab their goals while they can. We get a little bit of hiding versus bashing stuff with fire before Dom completes that and is then able to go into Hot Foot. And while that theoretically would have pushed Dom for this column 4 bingo, Flesh's progress in Night Manor was able to block that before it really started. And then I think at this point in the game, the only bingo that is even left as an option is the top row bingo. So Flesh, seeing the advantage of being able to play Block Koala for this and block the top spot and maintain his point advantage, is going to go ahead and go for that here. And then after Hot Foot, Dom takes a sec to reassess the board. Likely sees that the top row is the only bingo threat left here, but isn't really sure exactly how he wants to attack it, or if he does. So instead we get to see a little bit of Waldorf, I think, for the gold disc. I don't actually remember. So while working on golds, Dom is able, or Flesh is able to grab the Block Koala square and block the last bingo that's left. So with the score 7-8 after 37 minutes, by the way, players are officially in a majority situation, and the quicker goals that are left on this card are definitely starting to dwindle. We do see the infamous Valgares goal while Dom is working on some Campanella 2 to be able to open 2 chests in 5 games. Typically not a game that you get to see super often for 2 chests, but it ends up working out pretty well. We do also get to see Dom popping back into Divers to open up another chest after grabbing the early game gift on that, and eventually is able to mark it off. And then we see the gold disc rush from Flesh while also trying to beat 8 levels in 3 different games. So both players kind of cashing in their general progress here. Dom pivoting over to Party House and sitting in that for a little bit while Flesh is able to make some advantage. We do actually get to see, it's kind of rare, but we get to see Blockawalla as a viable 8 levels in 3 games here. Because Flesh already beat 5 Southeastern levels to be able to block the top row bingo. He only had a couple more that he had to do here to get 8 levels in 3 games. And all of the levels that he had left unplayed were all like the really early game fast ones. And then we start to see a pretty interesting endgame forming here, and the endgame specifically is what I wanted to recap a lot in this game, because obviously both players played really well all game, but the endgame scenarios here were a little intriguing, because both players are pretty far into 8 levels in 3 games, and Dom makes the decision to try to double up with Campanella 3 here, because Campanella 3 waves, each wave counts as its own level, and theoretically you can link in 8 levels into cleared stage B waves pretty well, but as I've mentioned kind of a lot in these recaps, Campanella 3 is effectively an auto-scroller, and the bad thing about auto-scrollers is that you can't really make them go any faster, even if you really, really want to go faster. So Flesh is able to grab this square just in the nick of time by going a little bit faster through Campanella 1, and then is able to pivot that into the Campanella 1 gold disc, while Dom grabs that space and is now tied 10 to 10, but is in a situation where he doesn't have any gold discs, and while there are some pretty quick games to rush, it doesn't super feel great to rush a general goal and then get sniped on it. So I think at this point in the game, Dom is assuming that Flesh is probably working on one of the remaining gold discs that's on the card, and is likely going to grab that space and gold disc, which would mean that Dom theoretically has to grab every other space that's on the board. So we do see a little bit of Devolition beat 5 rounds and a run, placing only the middle piece of the available 3, which is a pretty hard goal, not even just because it's more RNG reliant than regular Devolition is, but it's also just kind of hard to remember that you actually need to only place the middle piece. And while Dom does make some pretty significant progress on this, we do see Dom unfortunately grab one of the side pieces and place it down in the middle of this run here. I didn't actually see when it happened, honestly, but... oh, yep, there we go. So grabs the frog, places it down, and then realizes that he grabbed the frog and has to reset. And that little bit of extra time allows Flesh time to finish up Campanella and get the gold disc, which prompts a head-to-head War is Bad race with neither player having any amount of progress in it. Dom starts with the tactics, while Flesh starts to work through combatants. Ants is a little mean, as it typically is, honestly, for bingo, which allows Dom enough time to be able to get through the tactics and Avianos portions of the game, and start Ants while Flesh is trying to clean up the rest of this level. And while Flesh did manage to get pretty far into tactics on the follow-up, Dom did a better job of heading to Surprise and then also just getting through Surprise quicker, and is able to grab War is Bad. And then we have an interesting head-to-head situation here. Both players are obviously aware that the only 2 spaces left on the board are Hotfoot Gold Disc without Edgar or July, and the Devolition Gold that Dom already wasn't able to grab earlier. Dom makes a 50-50 call that Flesh is likely going to head into the longer of the 2 goals, and makes that call and hops into Hotfoot Gold Disc on his own, while Devolution ends up actually being the pick for Flesh, and Flesh decides to just go for the faster goal. And it's an interesting situation because most of the time in these recaps I've sort of harped on how helpful it is when you're a player with a point advantage to kind of just go for the longer goal available. But Flesh, having played enough bingo, knows that that's kind of like the average thing that players will do, and instead just opted to end the game on the quicker space while Dom is stuck doing a much harder and longer goal. And while Dom was able to grab some good progress in that, Flesh was instead able to finish that up and win 13-11. So another very hard, well-fought game by both players. I think both players played exceptionally well this game and did a good job of threatening each other for the entire game. And it pretty much just came down to, at the end, the 50-50 game of guessing what game your opponent was in and hoping that you could kind of snipe them on it and get a little bit of extra space there. But GG's to Dom and GG's to Flesh. The finals being between Keeney and Flesh should be really, really fun. And definitely a game I'm looking forward to, because both Keeney and Flesh have played out of their minds this season, honestly. And I definitely can't wait to see a best of 3 between them. Oh, I also just realized I have not been updating this ticker at all. But that's fine. We'll update it for the second half of this. Okay, so given the order of this, I'll do Adore versus Toots first, and then we'll cover Lizdar and Hackeroni after that. Okay. So, next up is a game between Adore and Toots. Adore, in this season, has been undefeated and has some very lovely block koala art to start the game. And meanwhile, Toots is just starting the game, working on some kick club. I think the game hasn't actually even started yet, so as players actually get into the game itself, we start things off with a Mortal Race, which is always fun. As I've mentioned a couple of times in this recap already, Mortal 2 Gold Disc isn't really a thing you get to see raced very often in Season 2, unless it happens to be a space on the board. And on this board specifically, you get Mortal 2 Gold Disc progress and a boss progress, and a cherry disc. Most likely, like 99% of the time, you're going to be getting a cherry disc in this route. And I think, honestly, even if you end up getting sniped on the Mortal 2 Gold Disc portion of this, it makes more sense to just grab that space while you can, and start to make the progress on the other spaces while you can. You see a little bit of divers to open the chest containing the Parasite Hammer, and considered staying in. Is there another divers goal on here that I'm not seeing? No. Might have just wanted to confirm that first. Okay. And thankfully for Toots, and I guess also Adore, but thankfully for Toots since they're actively working on it, this is maybe one of the most friendly boards possible for cherry discs, between Mortal 2, Waldar's Journey, even Barbuda, and obviously the Magic Garden that is also a gold disc space on this board. It's pretty rare that you get to see both Mortal 2 Gold Disc and Magic Garden Gold Disc on the same board at the same time. And especially with only 2 cherry discs, it just ends up being like really synergistic to do the Season 2 start. Season 1 start, I guess I should say. As the first two things in the game, Toots is able to cherry both Mortal 2 and Magic Garden, grab 3 spaces out of it, and also an extra boss. And it already puts up into a pretty pressing advantage here, since Magic Garden also does block that bottom row bingo. And meanwhile, Adore has been working this during that time of that happening to speak to a bunch of different Bean NPCs while also obtaining the Rod and Blood Sword. So good double synergy in Barbuda, but just stuff that takes a little bit longer to do. And meanwhile, Toots is able to jump up 4 to 1 and start to threaten a couple of different bingo lines with 2 spaces. The one thing that's a little rough about Barbuda and Bingo is it's one of those games that you're sort of locked into when you're forced to go for goals like this, because Barbuda doesn't save progress or anything, and obviously if you're this far in, you probably want to grab that progress. I guess a little interesting thing to note is that this specific Barbuda goals that Adore is going for, like if they were to leave the game and then come back, as long as they spoke to a different Bean NPC and or grabbed the Rod and Blood Sword, like independently of each other, they would actually be able to stack like those across different runs if they had to save and quit out. But with that double synergy, brings it back within 1 point, and seeing the power of that center square Waldorf's journey, which is honestly a very fast center square, and honestly, theoretically, everything except for that Lords of Asconia space can be done pretty fast. Both players seeing that center column and going for it. We do get head-to-head Rufus race, which is always really fun. You typically don't get to see Rufus with more than just the 2 party members, though, so I'm interested to see 3 and 4 here, although I guess there is the triple Grimstone synergy here of get Rufus to level 2 and feed him a dog treat, have 3 skills learned at once, and I would say triple synergy, but you actually can't do 4 items equipped to Rufus, so that ends up actually not working out for triple synergy here. And also not working out for Toots is Rufus still getting targeted somehow. The farther you go down in the party list in Grimstone, it gets like half as likely to be attacked by stuff. So theoretically, Aria should be the one that's being attacked here, not Rufus, like almost 75% of the time. And you definitely need Rufus to stay alive. Adore changes his name to Doofus? That's not nice. But Adore is able to grab the level 2 a little bit faster there. Assuming that pretty much just came down to Grimstone RNG, as that game is a little RNG heavy unless you're doing the manip for it. And tied 5 to 5. Most of the bingo threats present on the board are blocked at this point. The only ones that are left are the outer column and bingo, or column and row bingo here for Adore, and the inner column and inner row bingo here for Toots. So starting to work on that / make progress elsewhere. We do see Toots trying to win 4 games in Hotfoot just to be able to block both those bingos at the same time. And meanwhile, Adore is working to learn 3 skills at once. And I think seeing the threat of both those and also acknowledging that defeat 7 bosses is like the cross point between those 2 bingos, and it's going to be helpful for either one that Toots decides to push. Starts to rush bosses while Adore is working to learn 3 skills at once. Currently up 3 bosses, with this about to be boss number 4. This is looking like a pretty good situation for Toots to be able to grab this. And obviously defeat 7 bosses doesn't help as much now that Dora was able to stay in and grab Grimstone. But it does still push the column 2 bingo that Toots was eventually able to get, so definitely understandable to stay in and grab some bosses and try to push that a bit more. So even though the score is tied 6-6, the only bingo threats that are left, I didn't even really mention the column 5 for Toots, but I guess that could have theoretically been in play here. But I think at this point in the match, both players are just trying to grab spaces that are available. I don't actually see what this Rakshas is for. It might just be bosses. So a little bit of bouncing around here, tied 6-6, but eventually Dora's able to settle into Mooncat to work on defeating 6 unique enemy types, while Toots is trying to finish up stage 2 to defeat 7 bosses. Both players are eventually able to do that. We see a little bit of an attempt at Mooncat here, but Adore marks that off pretty much right away here, I think. Oh no, it does not. Okay. So this may have ended up being a little bit bigger of a race for defeat 6 enemies than I thought it was going to be. Which is good if you're a door, because that ends up blocking a decent amount of time. And I think seeing the threat of that bingo, Toots then starts to push the longer of the 2 goals. If you're either player, you know that the other player at least has, like, or you assume at least that the other player has progress in Grimstone. Adora was the one that was able to grab both of those Grimstone goals, though. So I guess if you're Adora, you maybe don't know exactly how much progress Toots has on it. One of the tough things about being in a head-to-head race like that, when you're just playing the games themselves, is that players are muted and deafened while they're playing these games. So you never really have, like, a clue where your opponent's at unless you just know where is most beneficial on the board for them to be. And if you're a door and able to grab 2 of the 3 Grimstone goals, it kind of makes sense that you would probably have enough progress to be able to work towards the 4th or the 3rd Grimstone goal. But as I mentioned when we were kind of covering the head-to-head in Grimstone, the party that you end up needing for a posse of 4 is pretty different than the one that you end up actually using for a lot of the other goals in this. And we do see a little bit of a head-to-head in the gym before Adore is able to mark that one off as well. And up 9-7, has the advantage of number of spaces and is trying to just stay in a little bit longer to get gifts and get that synergy. And meanwhile, Toots is going to go ahead and hop back into Campanella 2 to try to push that bingo. We do get a pretty rare, in any tier at this point, head-to-head race in Campanella 2 to collect 2 scrolls in 1 run, which isn't like a super long Campanella 2 goal, but does require you to at least know the intro 3 stages pretty well. And both players end up having a little bit of a tough time in there. Does this end up actually being the 2nd scroll here, or did we end up quitting out? Let me just watch this and remember. Okay, yeah, so Toots is able to grab the 2nd scroll here, and then a little aggressively holds that space to be able to start a new game of Grimstone and get started on having 4 items equipped to a posse of 4. Meanwhile, Adore is having enough struggles in Campanella 2 that ends up having to restart there. And while Toots is setting up the party for this, This Grimstone goal ends up being pretty quick if you have like the perfect party for it, because really all you have to do is like collect a little bit of money and walk up to the top town and like max out your inventory stuff. And after making a little bit of progress into Grimstone, is going to go ahead and cash in the Campanella 2 space and for some more direct head-to-head in Grimstone. Thankfully for Toots, Adores 2 Grimstone goals worth of progress. Didn't like super synergize with the fact that like they're all kind of at the same level at this point. And with that extra bit of time from the hold, is able to go down to the church, grab the holy water, make his way back up to the shop, and pick up the 9-9 bingo win. So another game that was very well played by both players. I think Camp 2 was really the only struggle point for either of them, and honestly Camp 2 is just such a hard game that it's kind of hard to really call it a struggle point. Honestly, it's just a hard game. And having a 9-9 bingo win in under an hour, and kind of like the middle tier of our current tiering system, is definitely extremely impressive. GG to Toots, and Toots ends up playing the winner of Lizstar versus Hackaroni. And as you can tell from this board, another game that was incredibly well played by both players. We have another incredibly fast square in Bug Hunter get 4 kills by pushing a job, or in one job by pushing bugs into pits. We also have some incredibly long goals in Trotters and clearing the 4th seed in Fist Hell. And honestly some regular long goals and Campanella finish stage C. Another short goal in Mortal 2 Gold Disc again. I'm not sure why we saw so much Mortal 2 Gold Disc this week, but rewarding players that have practiced their speedruns, I guess. So both players kind of isolated into their own corners of the board for the first portion of this game. Liz grabbing the Mooncat Square, Hackaroni grabbing Mortal 2, and setting up Pilot Quest for Activate 2 Teleporters. Liz popping in to push some bugs into pits and start to threaten a pretty aggressive diagonal bingo already. While Hackaroni is starting to push a pretty aggressive column 1 bingo. At this point in the game, it's still obviously pretty early, so it's kind of tough to say whether or not either player is like super pushing a bingo. But it does look like, unfortunately, it does look like one of the bugs made a hole instead of being pushed into a hole, unfortunately. So Liz losing a little bit of progress in that and going behind 3-1 in an early hole while still managing to block this bingo in the column 1. We do get to see a pretty extended Fist Hell play, to be honest. Fist Hell beat the 4th scare is not typically a goal that you see rushed this early into a game. But since you already had to play pretty far in to be able to... it's interesting that the Fist Hell push enemies into pits and Bug Hunter push enemies into pits goal both showed up on the same card. I don't think that's happened in a match that I've casted. And definitely not one where both of the spaces are marked pretty early and also had good spots on the board. But as Hackaroni is able to kind of take that advantage of having to play through level 3 in Fist Hell anyway, might as well play an extra level in Fist Hell and grab the very hard, even though it's typically a goal that is obviously very hard and long to do. Liz pops back into Bug Hunter to try to push some bugs in the pits, and is eventually able to do so, and is now re-threatening that diagonal bingo. During that time, Macaroni was able to get the Meat Shack online for Pilot Quest, and I don't think Liz at this point has even touched Pilot Quest, so we get head-to-head Hotfoot in trying to win 4 games in one tournament. This is pretty helpful if you're Liz in advancing the top row bingo, and is equally helpful if you're Hackeroni by blocking that bingo and also starting to push the column 2 bingo. After a little bit of head-to-head, Liz eventually quits out there and switches over to Onion Delivery. The Onion Delivery is for 2 levels, I think. Is that all that was on here for that? But we do finally see a little bit of Pilot Quest progress from Liz to be able to get that going. And then, is this the Easter egg rush? Or UFO rush? Yeah, so we have a little bit of a UFO rush while Hackeroni is able to grab the gold disc in Hotfoot. So, pretty helpful that Hackeroni is already ahead on the gold discs in this game just because of how long a lot of the games are for gold discs on this card. There is actually somewhat rare synergy of Alpha Trilogy and Collect 4 gold discs from games on this card, where you could theoretically just do all of Alpha Trilogy plus another gold disc to be able to grab that. But obviously if you're not comfortable with Valgress / Overbold / Global Race, that's tough synergy to come by. But using their advantage here, Hackeroni is already 3 points up, and I think perhaps a little more importantly has more spread on the board, and at this point only really needs to worry about the diagonal bingo and I guess this column 4 bingo, even though that one's pretty far off. But since UFOs both blocks that diagonal bingo and then also starts to put pressure on the bottom row bingo, kind of forcing Liz to play very defensively here and just decide what she even really wants to go for here. Hackeroni does start to push that bottom bingo, and during that time it looks like Liz gets stuck in Party House for a bit. Given the spaces on this board, it looks like the game sort of slows down a bit here, so the spaces that are left on this board at this point either require a lot of game knowledge or require a lot of time in that goal only for that goal. So the game definitely does start to slow down a little bit here as players are kind of trying to reassess the board and where they're at and where they're able to even really go at this point. Hackeroni is in a good situation here to theoretically win this Party House seed, but guessing it doesn't work. So yeah, unfortunately not able to grab that Party House seed. Liz is able to play through Alphazar's Hat, and then eventually able to settle in and play a little bit of Divers, working towards level 3, while Hackeroni pops into Quibble Race to try to have $25,000. It looks like Liz does bank a little bit of that Divers progress. We get a head-to-head Invader, which Yep, never mind. We get back to the save point in Vanger and then split progress and go to divers. So this is a strategy that you end up seeing a lot in bingo, where players will work on a little bit of a goal and then make progress in it and then leave to go do a different goal. So that way, theoretically, if they are able to, or in Liz's case, if she's able to basically get a little bit of Vanger progress and then go reach level 3 in divers and then come back with Vanger progress, is in a bit of a better situation to theoretically get both those spaces here. And she obviously does have the advantage in Vanger at this point of just trying to collect items really quick, and is able to do that and then eventually pop out into Pilot Quest to start that progress, which again isn't quite as helpful as it maybe could have been earlier in the match, just because the Easter egg UFO has been blocked at this point. But obviously any space you can grab this late into the game is helpful. But unfortunately for Liz, since she banked the progress and didn't actually grab the progress, Hecrony is able to come back in and grab the level 3 in divers. And at this point, the only bingo opportunities for either player are Liz's column 3 or column 4 and Hecrony's column 5 and row 5. And I think both players are basically just going to use the remaining portion of this time to try to block each other's bingos and just get whatever quick spaces they can. Liz, being down by 3, obviously does need to snipe Hecrony on a couple of these longer goals. And after dying in Trotters, Hecrony hops back out to try to make a little bit more progress on Alpha Trilogy again. We do get a head-to-head Trotters race, which ends up being very hype. And thanks to, or I guess I should say partially thanks to, the earlier progress that Hecrony was able to do in Trotters, even though they weren't able to directly win that round, even just getting a little bit of knowledge on the Bingo Sync seed specifically for that, and using that advantage to make more progress the next time, allows them to stay just farther ahead of Liz to be able to grab Trotters. And with the score tied, or with the score at 12-8, if your Hecrony next point wins, and if you're Liz, you need every single space that's left on the board to be able to win, with no Alpha Trilogy progress, and speaking from experience, not as much comfort with the end game of Rail Heist. So gonna go ahead and just pop into Party House and try to do what she can here for the ending portion of this game. Meanwhile, Hecrony is going to go into Campanella to finish Stage C, only earning points from bonuses and bosses, which is a difficult goal, really regardless of your comfort in Campanella, just because of how tight on resources you are for that. And unfortunately for Liz, Party House did what Party House does in Bingo, and made things a little difficult. And while she was able to eventually grab that and correctly pop into Campanella to be able to start making progress on this, and Hecrony does get pretty close here on lives, is eventually able to grab that space, clean the game, and win 13-9. So another game where both players played really well. This is another game where there wasn't really a lot of like cross-board synergy to speak of, which kind of just led to players like sitting in a goal, doing that goal, and then moving on. And I guess outside of Fist Hell early on. But really, other than that, players definitely did a good job of identifying where their opponent would be most of the game and trying to go for it, and just having a lot of harder goals. And yeah, GG's to both. And Heckaroni will be playing Toots in the finals, and should be another really fun game. I think B2 also has best of 3, if I remember correctly, so should be a pretty fun one.
Oh, I know, but I mean, like, I was speculating that.
Okay. We have another 4 games to go, so I'll just finish up playoffs tonight, and we should be good from there. So next up on the docket, we have Nitro versus Smo for C tier semifinals. And Smo and Nitro played earlier in the season, and quite honestly, it was actually a pretty similar result to this, if I remember correctly. Both players have done a good job of improving a lot in this season, and I think this game showed it off pretty well. So, starting off, we have a head-to-head in Waldorf's Journey. This Waldorf goal is to cherry disc the game, so not like the hardest Waldorf's goal that we have, but definitely a pretty tricky one, and definitely not one that you normally see like as the first space that both players go for in a game. But there is the added synergy in this board specifically, being able to collect 3 cherry discs from games on this card and having one of them be Waldorf's Journey here. So you end up seeing a pretty back and forth Waldorf's Journey race as both players are attempting to grab the cherry disc, and are eventually able to do that while Smo moves on to Overbold. Overbold is a game that I feel like Smo's played like every single game this season, honestly. But one that she's definitely pretty comfortable with at this point. And meanwhile, Nitro is just attempting to find a spot on the board to kind of get settled in on. Obviously, getting sniped on a goal that you were spending like 6-7 minutes in is pretty rough, especially as the first thing to happen in a game, but able to recover quickly and grab a corner square of Warp Tank and attempt to start the Rufus goal, but unfortunately with a party of 2, Rufus can sometimes die pretty quickly, and while you don't need him alive to be able to feed him the dog treat, and you can actually revive him with said dog treat, you do have to still make it all the way there first, and gets another kind of unlucky encounter here. Any encounter with a Hawk is not one that you want to see when you're trying to solo the game, but you are able to eventually run as long as you're not blinded, so good news on that one. Rufus is revived, and Rufus is able to reach level 2. Eventually. Okay, so a little bit farther into this game, Smo getting to play another one of her comfort games in Party House, and able to turn a 4-celebrity party into one that actually wins, which definitely takes a lot of practice, because I know Best Wishes kind of gets memed on as being like the only thing that people tend to do in Party House Bingo, but even being able to win any scenario with 4 celebrities is definitely really impressive, and Smo does it pretty effortlessly here. And meanwhile, we get to see another round of obtain 3 clubs in Golf Area, actually with the exact same spot that it was in Flesh vs. Dom, which is really funny. And at this point in the game, players are kind of just trying to counter each other's spaces on the board and try to block as many bingos as possible. This is another one of those boards where everything that you're doing on the board is kind of going to take you a while, and everything that you're doing on the board isn't really helping you anywhere else, and it can sometimes be a little hard to find your footing in that. Also, for what it's worth, Smo was able to use the far celebrity party house to be able to win in party house, which also helps with Amy. Best Wishes is overrated now. So the only reason I don't agree with that is because even as someone who was attempting to route out Best Wishes in a couple of goals, like, Best Wishes is just kind of the safest thing to do in Party House Bingo a lot of the time. And most of the time, if you're doing another party, like, yeah, other parties have their advantages and stuff. I think Scenario 5 can be used in a couple of different goals, depending on which ones you're trying to do. But it's sometimes more safe to just do Best Wishes. So shout outs to the draw in Tactics. That's always fun to see. Easiest isn't best. Yeah, that's fair. I do think that there's higher risk, higher reward parties. Like, especially with, like, 6-star guests. I happen to really, really like Scenario 5 because it has magicians, for instance. And, like, I personally would like to see Party House maybe revisited in the off-season to try to encourage more of those, like, other parties to be shown. Because I do think it's actually a pretty hype bingo game, especially when you get head-to-heads in it. But also, speaking from experience, a lot of the Party House goals that you end up doing just end up being easier in Best Wishes. And part of that's just because of how busted the money and popularity generation is in that scenario. And then part of it's just because of how safe it is. And safety in a bingo goal is something that's kind of hard to quantify. But it is something that is pretty valuable. Like, if a goal is, like, theoretically a minute slower, but it's 100% consistent, and you can theoretically do the goal, like, 30 seconds faster, but it's only, like, 75% consistent, you still, Pokemon player coming out, you still do kind of have to account for the 25% of the time where you just don't win, and then you've wasted all that time. Whereas, like, if you do just kind of pop into Best Wishes and know that you can do Best Wishes in, like, 3 to 4 minutes or whatever, like, you have a pretty firm understanding of, like, yeah, that's just how long this goal can take. So, Party House rant aside, this game is tied 4-4 with most of the major bingo threats being blocked. The column 3 bingo for Nitro and the row 2 bingo for Smo are the main ones being threatened. I guess Smo also has the diagonal down here. But both players end up being stuck for a little bit. Smo's eventually able to beat 4 levels in Tactics to be able to mark that off and go up 5-4. And is going to work on extending that into 8 levels to be able to push that bingo as well. And Nitro, seeing the threat of that starting to form, is going to go ahead and hop into Pin Golf. Also from personal experience, this Pin Golf goal is definitely really, really difficult, and not even necessarily for the reasons you would expect it to be. Like, obviously hole-in-ones are hard in Pin Golf, and hole-in-one on 3 different courses is even harder. But because of the way the holes, like, actually lay out in Pin Golf, if you end up not doing this goal correctly, it's like almost an automatic, like, 3 to 4 minute time loss, solely because you have to play through, like, half the game to even get the chance to be able to hole-in-one stuff again. And I think we started to see a little bit of that grind as the matches went on. And with Smo now up 6-4, is able to kind of take her time a little bit more and start to work on some of the general goals in this game. Unfortunately for both players, there's not really, like, a lot of synergy with, like, doing a space on the board giving you a gift. So it is pretty much just just isolated gifts that you can do quickly from games that are on this card. But while Smo is starting to work on that, we do start to see a more aggressive push towards the row 2 bingo. And meanwhile, Nitro is doing their best to get through the hole-in-one stuff, but especially if you're able to hole-in-one holes 1 and 3, but then can't grab the rest of the holes later in the game, all of these resets that you end up taking in pin golf end up being pretty costly, just because you have to play so much of pin golf to even get the opportunity again. And the hole-in-one on hole 3 is very, very precise, and also doesn't really have like a great lineup for it, so it's pretty easy to loop and get stuck there while you're hoping to block it. And then after eventually getting it, we do start to see the threat of both players having the middle rows to work with here, with Smo's row 2 and Nitro's row 3. Smo's row 2 is definitely a lot faster than Nitro's row 3, and honestly, the center space doesn't super help Nitro out in this game outside of pushing the middle column and row bingos a bit more. And seeing that, Smo's going to go ahead and bank her Amy progress and just beat the sections of Hotfoot that she needs to beat to be able to block that. Looks like Hotfoot doesn't go super great, so we hop into Zoldath first. And meanwhile, Nitro does start to push this middle row bingo. I think is more trying to potentially set up the middle row bingo, just because trying to perfect 2 levels in Rock on Island can take a while, especially if you're not like super comfortable in which levels to go for and the setups that you need for it. But unfortunately for Nitro, the Fistel portion of Amy is definitely the hardest portion of it. Amy's not a super great character in Fistel for beating levels like efficiently, and as you can see here, she kind of takes a lot of damage in stage 2 if you're not careful. So this ends up being a head-to-head Amy race, specifically in Fistel. And while Nitro is able to finish up the Fistel portion of it, Smo is able to just barely grab the Fistel portion of hers just before that ends. And suddenly the only bingo that's left for either player is row 2. We do start to see, I think the only, like, it's tough to even call it a misplay because when you're this far into the game, it's kind of tough to tell. But we do start to see Nitro start to go for the Force mod in Vanger to just grab a space that they know that they can do, while Smo is starting to more aggressively push the row 2 bingo here by trying to beat Pinsard in Combat Ants, which is a relatively hard level. It's more that it's a long level, especially if you get the initial cutoffs right. And the Force mod from Verde Sector isn't super far, as we can see. Basically able to grab that at the same time. Smo is going to beat Pinsard and then go a little bit farther in to slay a spider in Combat Ants, which will give her the final gift as well. And then we get a head-to-head Planet Zoldath race, where if Smo gets it, she's able to get the bingo and clutch up the win. And if Nitro gets it, they're able to get a pretty significant snipe here. Quite obviously, at this point, Smo is 99% likely to be in Planet Zoldath, especially since a lot of the remaining spaces on the board aren't like super fast. The Lords of Disconia one can be fast, but even that one's not very consistent. And as we get farther in, we see, unfortunately for both players, a little bit of an extended race for Zoldath. And while Nitro looked pretty close here, did eventually succumb to Zoldath. We did have a seed for Nitro where they were able to have, it looks like 8 of the rares to be able to grab their rare map piece as quickly as possible. And a pretty nice setup here, where they have the teleporter, or the translator, right next to it. But unfortunately that guy shoots and kills. And then I think at that point in the game it's pretty much over. And yeah, Smo is able to grab the 11-7 bingo win. Another game where it was really hard fought by both players, and they both went back and forth a lot on games and were able to threaten each other while also blocking each other. And I think really the only like quote-unquote misplay from either side was when Nitro prioritized this Danger Space that didn't super help when that middle threat was being threatened. Because really any amount of advantage in any of those 3 spaces probably would have blocked that bingo and brought it to a blackout, but again, it's a little easier to say on this side of the casting than when you're in the middle of a heated match and playing against someone who's like neck and neck with you the entire time. So once again, very well played by both sides, and Smo will be in the finals against the winner of Goose and Aha, which a little rare in these playoffs, but we get a blackout. And not only do we get a blackout, we get a 13-12 bingo win with the minority grabbing the win here. There's a lot to recap in this game, but just generally speaking, obviously if both players are able to play to a blackout, it's a board where both players are pretty comfortable the entire time and are able to efficiently block each other while also working on other stuff. Getting into the game, the quick Mooncat and Night Manor gifts are grabbed pretty quickly. I guess it's not actually a Night Manor gift, but you have to get the Night Manor gift to be able to find 10 journal entries, so I guess it kind of is. And then we get a head-to-head for trying to collect the reward for the silverfish. Again, another really fast goal. And then we get to see a little bit of backing it up. I think honestly, even if Goose was able to get to Drilleys in time, I don't think you can get to Drilleys and back in like 30 seconds. And meanwhile, Aha is going to go for the a different Velgreskel. I was going to say it's the same one, but this is the other Velgreskel. It can be kind of reliant on RNG, where you have to just step on all the bomb blocks. So both players in goals that are theoretically pretty fast, but also reliant on RNG to be able to do it. And we do see a little bit of unfortunate placement again for Goose, where she was in this goal for a pretty long time. But one of the hardest parts of Onion Delivery in reverse is that you don't get the health refills that you're used to. And it can be a little tough to navigate around the city when you're not able to run into stuff as much as you normally are comfortable doing. And that ended up happening on that race. And meanwhile, Aha is going directly for win one battle in a full war on commander difficulty. Thankfully this goal was rewarded this season to clarify that it's just one of these battles and not like a full war on commander difficulty, because that would take forever. Goose, not wanting to be bingoed, intelligently popped into Hotfoot to grab the gift and also the center square. And at this point in the game, it's already looking pretty unlikely that the game's going to be going to bingo, because the only bingos being threatened at this point are pretty isolated, like individual columns. This diagonal is the only one that's even has more than one space done at this point. Do we see Goose with the manip in Grimstone? I think we are. So Grimstone for the Cherry Run is pretty infamous for being RNG manipped already. And the RNG manip in the speed run specifically uses the Trotter's terminal code that we saw last match to basically set an RNG seed each time you need a different RNG seed. The RNG manip in Bingo, however, uses the demo screen, and basically when the demo loads, from my understanding, it loads up a very specific RNG seed to be able to specifically work through like individual enemies and encounters and stuff, and the only thing that you have to do for it is just don't crit any of these attacks and just use normal attacks to get through the battles. And, shoutouts to Red Robot for mapping those out, because I do think it makes Grimstone stuff pretty consistent. As a Grimstone fan, I kind of liked the RNG, personally, if I'm being honest, because it kind of made for pretty fun races while still also being skill-based. But obviously, being able to bust out an RNG manip in the middle of a match is skill also, so... Yeah, I definitely agree that this match is absolutely one of the highlight matches of the season for sure, so I'm trying to make sure I'm recapping it a little bit slower than some of the other ones that we've done, but Goose able to grab 3 skills and pretty quickly move on from there, while Aha was able to beat Galbrain and then start progress on Day Job. Goose then trying to work on Hyper Contender for draft mode. And one of the benefits of Lazy Cops being on a card with Day Job is you can count the root around level as part of Day Job. And all of a sudden, the row for Bingo is starting to look kind of scary. Just because Aha is starting to make progress in Onion Delivery and Rail Heist, while Goose does have Grimstone progress. She intelligently saved that for a little bit because spamming to reach level 4 doesn't super help her in any way right now, and also has it marked on the board that they already have Grimstone progress, so it doesn't really make sense for Aha to go get it also. So after grabbing Onion Delivery in reverse, and I believe staying in for another day. Yeah, staying in for another day gets them the gift and also the progress for Day Job. And is now going to start to push 2 levels in 8 different games, and gets that pretty quickly. And at this point, Goose is basically determining if Aha really wants to be in This Is It for Ants for forever, or if they want to just push other stuff instead. Starts to push the other stuff instead, and understands that Aha is likely going to be in Ants for quite a while. Even when you're really comfortable in Combat Ants, This Is It is a very long and hard level that is also, frankly, more RNG dependent than some of the other hard stuff in this game. Even just making it to This Is It takes forever because you gotta walk all the way through the map. And once you get there, you realize that you have to kill 3, 4 enemy queens. And obviously deal with all of the ants that spawn in the meantime. Gonna go ahead and just fast forward slightly here. Aha sees how terrifying this level is, and after a couple of minutes bails out on it. And understandably so, because as I mentioned, this is a very hard level. Meanwhile, Goose is working to make the progress in Day Job to be able to block everything that she needs for that. And at this point, Day Job doesn't super help advance any of Goose's bingos that have already been blocked. But being down 8-5, it obviously is important to try to get the snipes where you can. And Aha not finishing Day Job after having so much progress in Day Job does end up kind of coming back to bite them a little bit, because Goose is able to swoop in and grab it and also start to make progress on gifts. And basically at this point, Goose is doing everything that she needs to do to be able to make the comeback here. And Aha, up by 3, is mostly just trying to kind of ride that advantage out to a majority win at this point. But as we start to get farther into this game, you'll notice that Goose does kind of keep that match differential within reach, and is able to eventually start to close the gap a little bit. Both players grab an additional space on the board, and then eventually Goose is able to grab another space on the board with the Big Bell Race 1, and is able to finish out Rail Heist to be able to grab Day Job as well. Again, during this time, it looks like Aha is a little bit more concerned with just trying to maintain the advantage that he did have earlier in the game, but one of the problems that I guess we haven't even really super mentioned with maintaining advantage is that you do end up doing a lot of longer goals because of that. And if you start to maintain that advantage a little too early, it's almost kind of like playing prevent in football, where you're kind of just letting your opponent do a lot in the meantime and just trying to kind of keep them out of scoring range as long as you can. And we do start to see a key rush from Aha, kind of just taking on one of the longer general goals that's left, while Goose is pretty aggressively starting to push gold discs and also trying to push Magic Garden to reach a score of 10k before you change seasons. Is able to grab that, and then we start to see reach level 4 with any character. And you'll notice that the lead's shrunk down to 2 here. And at this point in the game, Aha is essentially just trying to get 2 extra spaces to end the game that aren't This Is It. Because as we saw earlier in the game, Aha was not super comfortable with ants, and that's a hard level in ants even if you are comfortable with it. A little bit further in, Goose is eventually able to reach level 4, and Aha had some pretty bad luck in Avianos, which allowed Goose enough time to be able to also start Avianos, and not only have good luck, but also play incredibly well. And after a little bit farther into Avianos, is able to actually snipe that Avianos goal and tie it back up 11-11. And now we're in an interesting endgame situation where Aha almost has to play This Is It. He has 0 progress towards gold discs and 4 gold discs on this card. While possible, is definitely something that he would have had to put like a little bit of progress into earlier in the game to really be confident in right now. Because he has no clue that Goose is only 1 gold disc ahead. And while she hasn't gotten Magic Garden yet, which is a pretty fast one, like only being 1 gold disc behind theoretically makes it possible for you to come back. As a very slight spoiler, we did find out after the match that Aha actually spent more time in Combat Ants in this bingo match alone than he had in his casual profile ever. So all of the ants that we're seeing on this side of the gameplay for this entire time is almost completely unscripted. I don't remember if he said that he actually started to use the resource dock or anything, but honestly the resource dock is still kind of written assuming you've like beaten the game and know the like basic ant commands and stuff. The commentary for this part, by the way, if I remember correctly, is just Red Robot frantically yelling and asking to go back to base and spawn another guy. Because if you don't know, spawning ants is dependent on if you have any soldiers alive or not. And if you have one soldier alive, you're fine because your soldier's just keeping you alive in the back. And if you don't have any ants alive, the mission fails and you just lose and have to start over. And we're seeing the impact of how difficult this level is here because there's just red ants literally everywhere. And this level is very reliant on trying to clear that out quickly, and sometimes that can be a little difficult unless you have this big ol' murder ball here. So during this time, Goose is able to grab another couple quick gold discs, and then does make the play to grab these last two remaining spaces up here, and decides to gold disc without July or Edgar, and have that be the final gold disc to collect 4 gold discs on games on this card. And in 99.9% of game situations, with the board this filled out, getting to 13 almost like certainly means that you've won. But as I've mentioned kind of as a footnote on a lot of my bingo casts and also recaps, the majority rule of having 13 points only counts if you've blocked all of your opponent's bingos. And in this situation, obviously This Is It is down here and still very much threatening a bingo. So in this situation, even if Goose is able to grab this 4th gold disc and Hotfoot without July or Edgar, which they are able to do after a little bit of sketch, Hotfoot, Aha is able to instead just grab this space in the final seconds. The ants were finally nice to Aha, grabbed the mission success, and with an hour and 40 on the clock, Aha is able to grab the minority win and get the 12-point bingo win on a blackout. And yeah, it was a very, very fantastic game. It's tough to really say there was any amount of misplays or anything in that game, but I do think had Goose banked a little bit of gold disc progress and then hopped into ants to be able to beat This Is It, I think that might have been enough for her to be able to come back and win that game. But just unfortunately, because of the way the game played out, despite an incredible round of Hotfoot and being able to get the gold discs and getting to 13 points, still needed the extra push to beat This Is It in time, and just unfortunately ran out of time. And you can see here that Aha had played ants for a total of 7 minutes before this, as the 50th most played game in their collection on the main profile. And sometimes it just comes down to how comfortable you are and all the crap you haven't really played. And being able to clutch that out in really any situation, but especially under the pressure of bingo, and especially under the pressure of, if I don't get this square before my opponent gets this square, my season is over kind of pressure. Being able to learn what many consider to be the hardest level in ants. I personally think Commando 2 is more annoying, but I think This Is It is like objectively harder. But being able to do that in the middle of a game is obviously very impressive and very well deserving of finals. And another really, really well played game from Goose as well. She very much crushed it this season and crushed it this game. Just unfortunately didn't block that final bingo. So, and yeah, that is the C tier final, or C1 finals, I guess I should say. AHA will be taking on SMO in the finals sometime this week, so we'll definitely recap that one. And let's see how C2 went, because yeah, C2 has also been playing really, really well this season, and I think has done a good job of showing that just because this is technically our lowest tier does not mean that we're not getting like really, really good games out of this still. That is true. AHA did start the trend of covering cards with a little image. I made a comment about that in the bingo chat, and then everyone responded with their own cards, and then everyone just started using their own cards. And honestly, I think that worked out really well. I had a random piece of art that I had made at some point covering the card, but I really like having the UFO 50 card cover specifically, and that was definitely AHA. So getting into C2, we have Fireline versus Hugh. Hugh is able to pick up a 7-7 bingo win here. And looking at this board, there are a lot of really hard and long spaces that are on this board. And also a lot of very knowledge-heavy spaces as well. So that said, there are also a lot of really fast squares, such as buying 3 modules in one job in Bug Hunter, being able to gold disc Night Manor and Magic Garden. I'm not really sure why almost every playoff game this week had Night Manor, Magic Garden, or Mortal 2 gold disc on the card somewhere. And this one technically also has Mortal 2 gold disc on the card, it just is activate the switches and not an actual space. Fireline able to grab a very quick and very powerful center square, while Hugh has been working on Bug Hunter and the Night Manor gold disc. We do then see Fireline immediately pop into Worm 1, 2, 3, 4 to beat 5 southeastern levels, which is still theoretically pretty fast, but is also definitely the hardest grouping of block koala levels, although that doesn't super look like it impacted Fireline here, since it looks like they were still able to get through pretty quickly. And it looks like Hugh during this time is trying to work on scoring 20k in Campanella. And tied 3-3. Both players aren't super directly threatening bingos at this point in the game. It does kind of look more like Fireline is in advantage of being able to push bingos here. But kudos to Hugh for being able to identify one of the bingos they had left and start to push that line a bit more directly for them. We do see Fireline in Hot Foot, or in Fistel, to try to clear the first scare with $20 or more, and Hugh in Campanella 3 to beat Galbrain. Again, both of which are really quick goals, and both players are able to grab them very efficiently. Hugh also picking up a gift along the way, although I don't think that actually ended up mattering. And starting the progress on Triathlon, which is a pretty long general goal, in my opinion. Triathlon is you have to gold disc 3 of the 5 sports games, and 2 of the sports games are really fast, because Pin Golf and Bushido Ball are like kind of essential games for bingo. But the third one ends up kind of taking a while no matter what you pick out of it, unfortunately. Meanwhile, Hugh is starting to work, or Fireline is working on gifts, and also trying to advance their own bingos here. Looks like we're trying to beat tournament mode and hyper contender to be able to start to more directly push the middle column bingo. Well, Hugh is pushing triathlon. And yeah, this is sort of what I was mentioning, where there are a lot of fast spaces on this, but after that initial rush of fast spaces, anything that you're spending time on at this point is kind of only just for that one square. And now that Hugh has already gotten the 2 quick gold discs out of the way for a triathlon, is going to more directly push the advantage into a Magic Garden gold disc. And I mentioned it in other recaps, but mentioning it here just in case you skip forward to C2. Something that you can see being a pretty good strategy in bingo is making a lot of progress on a longer general goal and then kind of letting it hang there for a bit. So at this point, Hugh has 2 games worth of triathlon progress and is going to go disc Magic Garden, which theoretically puts Hugh and Fireline in a direct race to Grimstone goals and triathlon. But if Hugh's able to win the race in Grimstone, presumably they'll be fine if you're on Hugh's side, because you've already gold discs 2/3 of triathlon and just need the one longer game at that point. It's a little bit risky of a play because, again, players don't know what the other player has done this entire game. So, like, theoretically, Fireline could just be working on triathlon this entire time. Especially since it has been a couple of minutes since a square's been marked off. But obviously, being able to see Fireline's side, they're working instead on Barbuda and some gold discs and stuff. We do see a pretty aggressive hold here, especially since spaces have not been marked off in a bit. Obviously, this ends up working out pretty well for Hugh. But after that Barbuda space gets marked off, I know Hugh's probably feeling a lot better about that hold. Because having just marked off Barbuda, it's probably going to be about 3 to 4 minutes at best until Magic Garden Gold Disc can get marked off. Which gives Hugh an extra 3 or 4 minutes to be able to learn skills in Grimstone, which again sort of rolls then into the progress that he already has in triathlon, and theoretically should be able to kind of steamroll this bingo as it's happening. And we start to see that kind of slower and steadier mark off. Obviously you don't want to get sniped on Magic Garden Gold Disc, so you do have to kind of mark it off eventually. But even just being able to have started Grimstone and make the progress on it gives Hugh at least one of the 2 skills, and it looks like given these stats, Maria's also leveled up. So already 2/3 of the way through the Grimstone goal and 2/3 of the way through the triathlon goal. Even in a direct head-to-head setting is going to be pretty tough. I think at this point, Firelion definitely sees that threat starting to form and is just starting to work on triathlon at this point. Actually, it doesn't look like this is triathlon. It looks like this is the other Bushido Ball goal. So, focusing more directly on Firelion's own bingo line here, it looks like. Starting to rush to defeat the first match with every character in Bushido Ball. You can tell because someone intentionally picked Chiome. And unfortunately for Firelion, this aggressive focus on his own bingo put him in a position where even if he quit out and banked progress or whatever, this would have been pretty tough to come back on, just because Fireline basically would have had to gold disc Bushido Ball, Pin Golf, and most likely Hyper Contender, because I think that's the fastest one, even if it's not the most consistent. before Hugh Gold Disc's Big Bow race. And unfortunately, because of the struggles with Chiome, also wasn't able to make the Bushido Ball progress. I think did eventually quit out and just start to make other progress, which theoretically could have been in a situation where we had a direct head-to-head of could Fire Lion beat Bushido Ball before Hugh beats the sports games. Also, it looks like we actually didn't finish Pin Golf earlier, so only a 1-game advantage there, so it definitely would have been a pretty close race, I think. Yeah, I noticed that we got pretty far into Pin Golf, and I assumed it was the end of it, but instead, Pressure Pin Golf is one of the hardest games in Bingo. And thankfully it is just the Gold Disc, which does have a little bit more leniency than the Cherry, but still pretty easy to death spiral in Pin Golf for sure. And while Fire Lion was able to make a ton of boss progress, and I think I actually had enough bosses for it, just unfortunately wasn't able to mark that off and then push into Bushido Ball for the final couple of characters there. And he was able to win the head-to-head bingo race there and win 8-7. So very well played by both players. Just looking through the game, it definitely doesn't seem that either player needed like either player played pretty well here. And unfortunately, Hugh does have to unmark the collect 4 gold discs because Pin Golf's not on the card. But other than that, everything went perfectly, and also that didn't matter at all. So, but very well played. Both players definitely showing while they were in semis, and Hugh advanced into the finals against the winner of our final match that we're recapping tonight, Parchment versus Van's Drummer. And once again, a very, very well filled out board with the only 3 spaces that are being unmarked here being incredibly long and also difficult.
Can't, like...
Both Parchment and Van were 6-2 during the season, and both played really, really well all season. And once again, not only do we see Nightmare Gold Disc and Porgy on the card, we see Nightmare Gold Disc center square and Porgy 3 fuel tanks right next to it. This is, for some reason, like all of the Bingo Season 1 classics managed to get hit in this week of semis, which is pretty fun. He was holding bosses? Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I figured, is that he held bosses into getting a little bit more Bushido Ball progress first. And unfortunately just wasn't able to push that advantage in time. With a couple of extra minutes, that definitely could have went either way for sure, so that was definitely a really good back and forth game between you two. And unsurprisingly, the first 4 goals of this game are marked off incredibly quickly. A casual 4 goals marked off in the first 6 minutes of a C2 playoff game, by the way. So, again, shoutouts to both players for, first of all, knowing the quick spaces, and second of all, being able to execute them under pressure in playoffs is very impressive. So with Van down in an early 3-1 hole, this is already kind of a bit of an awkward spot for Van. Because while he has a gold disc and while he has center square, the gold disc doesn't really directly help because it's 2 cherry discs on this card. And to be perfectly honest, the route that you take for Night Manor Cherry is very different than the route from Night Manor Gold. And all of the major quick bingo lines that could have formed off of that middle space are already gone. So kind of in a weird situation where, yeah, we were able to grab the center space after a quick rush, but it kind of only really helped defensively. While Parchment was just kind of able to continue picking up spaces everywhere around the board and also get the synergy of collecting gifts along the way. Van was able to grab Paint Chase into an extended play in Campanella, while Parchment was able to grab the double synergy in Seaside and then hit 3 Eagles in Golfaria. And 18 minutes into the match, C2 by the way, again, we have 9 spaces marked off, which was the pace of a lot of the really intense A-tier matches. After the initial flurry of spaces, the game does start to slow down at least slightly. And by slightly I mean like the very, very quick spaces start to be gone, so the goals just kind of naturally take a little bit longer anyway. There's still not like a ton of great late game synergy here, because like all of the stuff that you're being asked to do in every game is kind of just isolated to that specific game. Really offhand looking at the board, the only synergy there is outside of food and camouflage, which isn't even really like a great synergy, as the Velgress collect 3 keys into it being one of the 2 cherry discs that you need. And given the fact that players, like 2 players marked off those 2 goals, that obviously didn't happen. So it looks like we did attempt the Big Bell Race gold disc with no deaths, and then I'm gonna guess had a death and quit out of it. But kudos to Van for being able to parlay that double Campanella synergy that I also didn't see, because I guess it was a yellow space, with have 25 lives and score 20k points, and bring this back to within 1 and sort of force Parchment to reevaluate a little bit. It does look like we are still attempting a little bit longer of goals here. Escaping with 2 of 3 collectibles in camouflage takes a little while, especially since you have to do it for 7 levels. Yeah. And meanwhile, Van able to keep pace and grab the multi-mod and then switch out and grab the gift in Big Bell Race. Not staying in for the gold disc with no deaths, which is definitely understandable. And we do start to see a little bit of a food rush on Parchment's side, and up 9-6 is able to kind of rebuild the lead that they had earlier in the game. We're working through combat ants at this point in the game because we're trying to slay a spider, which will also count as a gift, even though the gift space at this point has already been marked, so that's not super helpful. But being able to slay a spider anyway is good synergy there. And then widening the gap and going up 10-6, Van's basically just forced to block a couple of different difficult situations here. Will need at least a couple of snipes to be able to get back into the game. Attempting to go for 2 bosses since he already had a pretty decent amount of synergy in that, while Parchment switches over to Party House to try to beat a random scenario after purchasing the maximum amount of Old Friends and Rich Pals, which we did see kind of a lot of players across every tier honestly struggle with this goal a bit this week, just because of how obviously random it is, but also how hard it is even if you get a good seed. And we end up seeing that here, unfortunately. And it looks like we have a pretty extended play of Van in Big Bell Race. Did we end up having a death in the final stage? Or just not gold disc? No, we cherried. Was there a death? There might have just been a death along the way, I guess. Because I guess you don't necessarily need to cherry it, and could have just cherried it and had a death along the way, which I guess is more likely. And shoutouts to the head-to-head in Mortal 2, which I think is specifically just for the cherry at this point. And Van is able to pick that up and bring it back to within 2. We do have a pretty close head-to-head here, where if Van is able to grab at least like one more snipe, probably, should be able to tie this game back up. Unfortunately for Van, and fortunately for Parchment, Parchment does still have outer edges here available as a bingo, and can either set a bunch of time aside in a Tactics and Ninpek, or set aside some time in Lords of Disconia and Big Bell Race to be able to just grab the bingo to be able to win this. Van is working towards Metroidvania at this point, which honestly can be a pretty long general goal, but especially if you already have a reason to be in Vanger for other stuff, and like even if that reason is just for bosses or whatever, the Porgy and especially the Golf area portions of that goal are really, really fast, so understandable that Van was able to grab that. And at this point in the game, Parchment did grab Lords of Disconia and is pretty directly threatening that last column bingo. Kind of a tough bingo to force, because until you see your opponent mark something else off, it's pretty risky to want to go into Big Bell Race to try to gold disc with no deaths. And even at this point in the game, it looks like Parchment would rather win on another space than that one, which I don't blame them, because that's a pretty long and scary goal, as we saw from Van's side of things earlier. But unfortunately, Party House doesn't work. It looks like a Tactics also doesn't work for a bit. Party House again doesn't work for a bit for either player. So eventually Parchment just settles in and is like, alright, we'll just gold disc it. While Van is working on Party House, and eventually Parchment is able to gold disc and pick up a 13-9 bingo win in the final space of the season. And yeah, it'll be Parchment versus Hugh in C2 semis, or C2 finals, and it should be a very fun game. Both have grown and played quite well this season. And definitely looking forward to seeing the two of them face off, I believe, again. I don't remember exactly if y'all played earlier in the season, but okay. And gonna mention it again now that I'm at the end of this. We did also have like 20 or 30 games of Underground Bingo to play. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't really think I have the energy to do recaps for Underground Bingo like I have for this. I would like to try to find some way to recap the stuff, even if it's just kind of like quickly talking about results and maybe picking like a game or two each week to focus on. Or even potentially just doing clip shows stuff, depending on how many clips we get for that. So if you are interested in the Underground Draft Bingo tourney stuff, at least the regular season stuff, we may need to be a little bit more reliant on clips for that. Once we reach playoffs for that, I'll probably go back to covering it at least as quickly as I've been covering these ones. And honestly, this week I'm proud of myself. We got the recap just over 3 hours, and we're able to recap all the playoffs, which is nice. Coming up in the next week, we'll have all of the grand finals for tiers, and it'll also be week 2 out of 3 for the seeding portion of the Underground Bingo tourney. So next week's Monday Night Bingo will probably just be finals and recapping that stuff, and then after that we should be able to transition kind of nicely into just focusing on the underground bingo, like playoffs and stuff. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming tomorrow because Karma, Lizstar, and I are working on trying to set up a capture for Frost Fatales potentially, and trying to get a bingo submission out for that. So I don't entirely know if I'm going to be streaming that or if I'm just going to be offline recording it. But should be back to regular practice and stuff later in the week.